Welcome everyone to the BI user group of October. Today we have Michael Johnson taking us through proper source control in Power BI. And I agree with the sentiment. Finally, this is amazing. It's probably the thing I'm most excited about in the last few months in terms of Power BI updates. So I am very happy to hear what you have to share, Michael. No pressure.
No pressure.
Take you to today's agenda. Firstly, introduction and welcome. That's where we are right now. Next up, we're going to have the BI news from Sia. However, he can't join us tonight, I think, so we will be sharing a video instead. He was very well organized and sent us a video in advance just in case this might happen. And then we have number 3, Michael Johnson's talk on source control. And then finally, we'll have a little bit of a discussion, some announcements and questions after that. Before we go any further, some Zoom etiquette. We would like to see your pretty smiling faces, so please enable video if you're able, but keep audio muted so as not to interrupt the presenter. If you have a question at the time, Michael, I think you can delegate this. Usually we use the raise hand option, or maybe people can just shout, whatever you're comfortable with.
I'm happy with either. It is a free-flowing session, so go for it.
Okay, cool. Well, just shout if you want to shout a question, and raise your hand if you want to raise your hand. I just deleted point 3 there because, Sven, we are still waiting for the update on the prize, right? But for now, we do not have a prize.
Just needed to unmute myself. Unfortunately, it's not looking good. Their terms and conditions have changed. Their platform has changed. So they're reviewing what they're willing to share as a prize, but they're not ready to commit yet. That was 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 1 month ago. Still haven't heard. So I think we must just put it on hold for the foreseeable future.
That's great. Yeah, that makes sense. Luckier the ones who got the prize in the past, all the more luckier now.
Yeah.
All right. Then just a quick update on where we are. We're on one of the even numbered months of October, which means we're doing the news and then the flash. But instead of doing flashes, we're having Michael's talk taking us through the entire session. And then here we are now. This is our second last session for the year. We have another in-person session and also an online hybrid session next month, the last Thursday of the month. And we look forward to seeing you there on the 23rd of November.
Sorry, Stefan, isn't that the 30th of November, not the 23rd?
It might be the 30th of November.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Let me just update that now, make it clear for the recording as well. This is why I like having my slides open. 30 November, we have a hybrid in-person and remote session. But I've taken up way too much time already. Firstly, here we have Michael Johnson. I've mentioned him name a couple times. Principal consultant at Cobalt Analytics and also Microsoft Data Platform MVP. Michael, we are very pleased to hear from you. Please take it away.
All right, thank you. Okay, all right. Yeah.
I must stop you there. I forgot. We're doing news first.
Yeah, I thought it. Okay, yeah, let's get the news.
I'm missing something here now. Okay, no. So without further ado, let's go over to the video. Okay, so I'm going to reshare real quick. I'm going to need to stop sharing first. How do I stop sharing? I can't see Zoom. Oh, there we go. Oh, there it is. Okay, stop sharing. Cool. I'm going to reshare with audio real quick. Sorry about that. Screen 2 with audio, share sound. All right, share. Okay, can you all see the stream?
Yes.
Running this, and then hopefully you can hear the sound. Okay.
And welcome to the October Power BI user group session. Starting off with just some introductions. My name is Zungu. I am the tech lead of BI and data platforms in Cobalt Analytics, and I'll be presenting the news and updates for this evening's Power BI user group session. So getting right into it, just starting with the first news item for the day. We've got the AI, a new era, which is a presentation that will be happening in Sandton on the 30th of October. Just showing up now is the agenda item of what will be discussed and what will be talked about in that whole conference. and also just some details about where you can find the registration link. Last I checked, the registration is still open, so you can actually go to the link and see if you can register for the event if you are interested. All right, for the second news item of the day, we've got Power BI, OneDrive, and SharePoint on by default rollout has started. So for some time now, there has been the functionality that you could save your Power BI file on SharePoint and OneDrive, but now they are enabling it by default, and the rollout started in October. This will now basically enable you to save your Power BI file and actually open it directly from OneDrive and SharePoint, similar to how you interact with the other Microsoft documents such as your Excel or Word, which might be saved in which might be saved in OneDrive or SharePoint, so that you can then quickly access it from there and save it back to OneDrive or SharePoint after you've done editing. So this now has been made available, and it is going to be on by default. Then just moving on to the update section. The first section on the updates that we're going to be talking about is the mobile layout interactive canvas, which was enabled in the September release. This now allows you to interact with the visuals that are in your mobile view, so that you can see how it would work once that particular report has been deployed with the mobile layouts that you've created. So now you can interact with things such as your buttons, your matrix if you want to expand certain columns so that you can fit in all the data that is being presented, and also just moving the slider just so that you can see how that visual will interact once it's on a mobile view. And in that case, this will also just allow you to enhance and make sure that that interaction that you want users to experience is actually going to be what they're seeing on the mobile layout. Moving then to the second item in the updates, we'll be looking at the edit relationships in the properties pane has now been made generally available. This feature has been actually out for quite some time now, so since October 2022. So it's been a year in public preview, and now it's basically in general availability, where the properties pane for the edit relationships is now generally available for people to use. Then moving on to the next item in the update section, we'll be looking at the Model Explorer, which is a public preview feature with calculation group authoring. This is one that I've also tried out earlier this week, and I am excited about what they're bringing into Power BI Desktop. This is something that you would have to previously do in a tool such as Tabular Editor or Visual Studio to actually edit your semantic model and create your calculation groups from that particular application and then synchronize it back with your Power BI file. But now they're bringing the functionality directly into Power BI Desktop, and we now have a model pane or a model view in the properties pane where you can actually see the semantic model along with some of the functionalities such as your calculation groups, your roles, your tables, and so forth. Some of the functionality is currently presented in the desktop view, but is not yet, you can't yet author it in the desktop view, such as cultures and also perspectives. So those are visible, but you will still need a third-party tool to author them, to author those particular sections, such as Tabular Editor and Visual Studio. And with this view now, you can, as I said, create calculation groups and calculation items inside of your Power BI Desktop application, which I think is pretty cool. And they've also brought in some of the other functionalities, such as seeing your relationships and actually editing them inside of the model view as well. All right. And then lastly on the update section is an update that has been done on the on-object interaction, which is still in preview. And there's some cool features there that they've basically enhanced. One being the new date hierarchy on the data layout. So now you can either right-click or click on the drop-down arrow to, in terms of your date field, to either see it as a pure date or see it as a date hierarchy with your years, quarters, month, and date. So that one is, I think, a pretty cool feature there, just so that you have easy access to switch between those dates in terms of the types that you'd want to use. The second feature there is the new placeholder text for direct text editing. So this is where when you click on an object within your report, and then you get those blue lines with the square boxes, which then allow you to select an item within your visual that you would like to edit. So in this case, such as the title, where you can now directly type the title on the visual as opposed to going to the format pane on the right-hand side and actually looking for the title section, then typing your title in there. So they've just made it easier for you to find certain sections where you can edit those directly on the object itself. And then the last feature released there is the new ribbon and funnel charts are now supported on the on-object formatting as well. So if you were using a funnel or a ribbon chart before, which didn't support that on-object interaction, that has now been enabled for those visual types so that you can get the same functionality as we had with the other visuals that were there and supporting the function. And then lastly, just some useful links of where you would find some of the topics and the information relating to the news and updates for today. So this is basically the sources for where the information is coming from if you're interested in getting more details about what we've discussed in today's news and updates. And with that, that brings us to the end of our news and update section for today's user group news and update section. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the session.
Oh, that was very interesting. I am always baffled by how many new things Microsoft can come up with every single month. It is really amazing that they can do this much stuff. It sounds like there are some really nice quality of life updates, you know, things that you have to use external tools. You can just stay inside Power BI Desktop a bit longer, can stay in the properties pane a bit longer, and then you can also edit things directly on visuals. Like that seems a bit crazy. I understand why it's in preview. It sounds quite difficult to pull off for the Microsoft developers. But yeah, now I can actually say that we can start with Michael's talk. So here we are. There's a pretty picture of Michael. We found this one on your LinkedIn page.
There's such a thing as a pretty picture of Michael, I'm not sure.
Definitely. So yeah, without further ado, I'll allow you to take over the screen share and you can take us away.
Cool. All right. Yeah, start that ugly. There's me mug. All right, so we'll just start off with a bit of an overview of what's happening inside of source control. Because while we're saying finally, source control is ready, the truth is it's actually not ready. Okay, so it is still within preview features. It's still a bit raw. You're going to see as we go through it. There are definitely bits that aren't slick yet. Okay, so we're gonna be using funny tools and exporting to weird places and looking at things. The sessions intend to be very clickbait indeed. It's going to be very exploratory, so I don't necessarily have anything prepped. Right, click this, click. We're just going to go and do stuff, and we're going to open stuff and have a look at it and see how it all works. So if you have a question, absolutely happy that you just jump in and we'll have a look. Right? Okay. So really on the source control side, there's two things that are happening. The one is that Power BI is, one of the challenges with Power BI source control has always been the PBIX file itself. So the PBIX file is a binary file. Okay, it's actually just a zip version of a whole bunch of files, but essentially any source control system sees it as a binary. So any change, regardless of whether you did it, if you've done anything or not, registers as a change, right? So even if you open the file and save it. Part of the metadata is just the last saved date. Therefore, the whole binary is different. Therefore, source control saw the whole change. So maybe what you were doing is you were checking in that whole file. And if you, maybe even had a small little PBX file, 50 megs, checking 50 megs in twice a day, for 2 or 3 years, your repo gets really, really big. So it just really wasn't a workable solution. What some of us were doing was exporting out to templates, and then you sort of check the template file in, which also works. But the problem is you can't actually determine what that change is, right? Because it just says the file's different, not that there's anything usable different. So really it was versioning, not source control. Okay. So what they're doing is they're restructuring this. That actually allows us to get genuine source control, because instead of saving this thing to this binary object, we're actually saving to a whole bunch of text files underneath. So underneath it's a whole bunch of JSON files. We're going to have a look at those JSON files. But we can start doing those, and then source control on JSON files becomes a lot more manageable, because when I change a specific file, I can see what that change is. A very simple example: I change the color on a line. I can physically see the color going from hashtag FFF whatever to whatever, that new value. Okay, so we've got that sort of source control. The next thing we've got genuine source control integration within the workspaces, because we never had that integration, right? We had deployment pipelines, and what deployment pipeline said is, declare this original or your dev workspace, make all your changes in that workspace, and you can promote it from dev to the next environment, and then from there into your third environment, right? Usually dev, test, prod. Okay. Challenge with that is that, one, we never ever actually got to save the actual change, and two, when we deployed from one environment to the next, we were deploying the thing from the previous environment, where in what we want to do in source control is share from a common source where we know it's always tested. Now, where that can go wrong is, if you, let's say I've got a report in dev, and I make some, I sort of publish it there, and then I deploy it to test. Okay, and then somebody comes into test and makes a change in test, and then publishes that to prod. That's what goes into prod. So we'll see this new change in prod, but it never ever existed in dev, right? So it's not a true CI/CD, right? Because we actually don't have that ability to deploy from a controlled environment. So we're going to get all of that. All right, so we're going to start looking at it. We're going to start looking at the new file format, okay? And then we'll go and look at some of the source control, and then we'll sort of start playing around with those two things. Sven, just remind me, how much time do we have? I can talk a lot, so
this is Stefan's show today, but basically we're due to end at 6, but we can go
6.
over.
All right, so if I said half an hour from now, it's good. No, it's all right. I should start my watch. Otherwise, I can go on for hours. Okay, so I'm going to come over and share my screen if I know where to do that in Zoom. All right, and if all is well in this world, you should see Power BI. Are we good? Can you see Power BI there, Sven? Anybody?
Power BI
here?
Yeah. Okay, yes, fantastic.
Giving you the thumbs up.
And the resolution is great. We like that. Okay. Okay, so in order to enable this feature, it's still in sort of public preview. So it's not on by default. Okay, so how we're going to do this is we're going to go Files, we've got Options and Settings, Options, and then we'll come to these new preview features. You're going to see there's this new option for this Power BI PBIP option. All right, so that is a Power BI project, and that's, if you think, if you're from the Visual Studio world, it's like a solution file. So we've enabled this, and we're going to say, okay, now I've got a very simple report. It's actually nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and save this, save this file. So when I go and say save as, I'm going to quickly go and browse. Create a little folder for that, dev demo. Again, we're going to call this demo 1, right? Okay, so when we usually create a Power BI file, we use a PBX file. Now, I mentioned that there's a new format, which is this PBIP. There's also PBIT file. Okay, we spoke about that. The PBIP is this new project file. And when we save that, it's going to go and save a folder that's exposed. So let's go and open. Before we even open that file, I'm going to come to that file. You can see this is where I'm going to save. So, nothing behind my hands, the usual wizard's kind of trick. And we're going to go and save that demo file. So if we come back to this folder, yes.
There was a question in the chat from Tinas
All right.
asking if this thing is still in preview, is it safe to use?
Yes, it is safe to use. So we're going to get there. We're going to see some of it's not necessarily very useful. Okay, so one of the things I should also discuss is that there is a process of hardening the file format. So currently it's a JSON file, or it's a series of JSON files, and those JSON files are very temperamental. Okay, so it's not, the only thing that is going to be supported is if Power BI makes these changes. So where it is, you would be in dangerous ground is because I've got these exposed JSON files, and if I manually made a change, and that change broke the PBIX file, Microsoft will not support that. So as long as you always use Power BI Desktop to make those changes, yes, it is safe. So, obviously you just need to decide whether you're going to want to get, and we're going to go, I'm going to do exactly what I've told you not to do. We're going to actually go and open those files and make little changes and see how things happen. All right. But yes, it absolutely is safe to use. I mean, obviously you can always think about whether you want to put that into prod or wait till it hits, general availability, which is probably a good idea. But, Microsoft will support it. Okay, so we've got this a file now. Usually, when I say that I would have had a demo 1.pbit or pbix, and now I've got this pbip file. And I'm going to go and open up code, Visual Studio Code, because now all of a sudden we're sort of entering in the world of developers. So I'm going to go and let's save that. Let's go and open a folder. We're going to go and find our dev folder. So Visual Studio Code, for those of you who don't know, is basically a lightweight text editor where we can sort of very easily browse through things like JSON files and folder structures. And this is just going to make it so much easier to have a look at what's in this folder. So I'm just going to go into dev, demo, frog, and we're going to select that folder. And you can see that we've got these objects. Okay, I trust myself. And we're going to have a look at this this demo.pbi. And you can see all it does is it says, it's version 1. We don't really know what versioning means right now because it is just version 1. And it checks in this artifact, right? This report. Okay. And yeah, so that's all that does. It's just a link to other things. So when you double click on this PBIP file, it opens it up. It finds out where the next bit is. Okay, well, where is the visual? And then it comes to this folder, right? Okay, so this folder then describes the report. Now, if you remember, when I created this file, there's nothing in there. There's an empty page called page 1. All right, so let's go and have a look at what that structure looks like before we start adding things to it. Let's go and see what's in there before. Okay, so we can see that we start with report.json. Okay, it is a JSON file, and we have settings. So this is where things are not quite hardened. We spoke about that desktop hardening. You can see there's still a sort of embedded JSON object. So this is JSON, and then it's got escaped JSON. So it's not really readable right now. Okay, but it does describe a lot of things. So we can see that these are some of the configuration items on the report. You can see like the default theme that's in progress. And then we come to the sections file. Okay, now sections are Power BI pages. Okay, now JSON is so JSON's a way of describing things. Okay, and this little square bracket is an array of things, and sections are what we call pages in the backend. So you'll see that there is one array, and you can see it's got a display name of page 1. It's got a couple of things. Now, obviously, we haven't added anything to it, but you can see that we have this visual containers array, and it is empty. No, obviously, it's empty because we haven't done anything. So let's go and sort of experiment with that quickly. So we're going to come back to our Power BI report, and let's go and add a text box, because everything needs a report, and we're going to say hello world, right? I think that is the obligatory sort of first developer program, because we're becoming developers now, not just BI people. And I'm going to go and save that file. So I'm going to go and save that change down. Did it? Sometimes I wish these things would be a little bit more explicit about the fact that they've saved things. If we're going to come back in here, so we haven't done anything, but you can see that we've now suddenly this visual. Oh, sorry, we added that visual, and you can see that one item has been added to this visual. So you can see that this is the new visual we've got created. and it's still got a couple of things in there, not very descriptive. And what you'll see is that there's a little bit of repetition. I guess I'm just going to go and actually we're going to go and dig the string out. And now this is a JSON string that is embedded in a JSON string, so it's got a whole bunch of escape characters. You can kind of see that those slashes. I'm just going to paste that into a brand new text box. We're going to do a find and replace. Sorry, not find. So you can draw. When you forget how to replace on Control H. Okay, so we're going to go and find. Whack and replace that. Just whack. Have I done that the wrong way around? I have. So whack. And we're going to go and replace. Okay, so now we've got a valid JSON object, and we're going to have a quick look. And we're not here to look at JSON objects, so we're not going to spend a ton of time. But you can see that this describes the visual. Okay, first off, it gives it this big random GUID. Okay, so this is where we spoke about that desktop hardening kind of being there. There is no assumption by Microsoft currently that that name will not change at any given time. And that kind of thing would cause absolute havoc within source control. So as we go through the process of hardening it, eventually we would actually be able to give that visual a name and know that that wouldn't change. We've got a whole bunch of layout information, but can you see that we've got the XY coordinates as well as the height? And that information is repeated in this box, all right? So you can see there's still a little bit of work to go. Okay, again, I said we're not going to go too deep, but can you see how that is becoming visible in a way that wasn't? Now we're going to do something that's not supported, right? So I don't like page 1, or let's say I want to go and change that heading, right? So fine, let's go and say we have this hello world sort of tag. I'm going to go and change that to hello world to hello Sven with a fug, right? The fug, JHB fug, right? JHB sounds like we're swearing at each other. Okay, I'm going to go and save that. Okay, so I'm going to make that change. Now, you remember when I saved a Power BI report and it automatically updated in the text box? Power BI has no automatic detection right now. So what we actually have to do is we have to come back into this Power BI report. We have to shut it without saving it, go back, click on the PBIP file, and we open it. And if all is right in this world, and hopefully it's going to open on the right screen. So it's just showing up on my other screen. It did open up on my other screen. Hopefully it's going to say, hello, fug. Did not save. Why did it not save? Did I save it in the wrong place? Did save, right? Control, save. Some people.
Do you need to escape it back? Because, I mean, you replaced a whole bunch of stuff.
No. So remember, I dug out that JSON string and I moved it into a separate tab. I'm not touching that tab. I just wanted to show you what was in there, but you are quite right. It is not a thing. I did modify this, but I think I just didn't save this. Again, explicit save buttons are quite nice. I'm old school. I want to see a thing say save. Drives me mad about Fabric, right? Nothing really. You never know if you've saved anything, especially notebooks. All right, okay. So we'll give that another chance. We're going to shut that guy down. Oh no, there it is. There it was. It was right. It just took a second to load. Okay, but you can see that when this Power BI report, it's going to open up on the wrong page again. It's going to load. It's going to load slowly. There we go. Hello, folks. So you can see that we can all of a sudden make changes. Now, when I spoke about unsupported actions, what I've just done there is unsupported. It is not supported that I go and change a value. Now, I'm pretty confident that changing the value of a text box is not going to break anything. But if I start changing positions, changing names, changing the order of items in an array, that may or may not be supported, and that may or may not break my report. And Microsoft may or may not support you. Okay, so from that perspective, you might want to hold back on doing things in production, but absolutely you want to start playing with this. But this isn't the point. Power BI Desktop is probably the way we still want to be modifying reports, and will be for the foreseeable future. Obviously, we've got a lot more ability to do kind of the stuff online, and we'll do that in a sec too. But yeah, so we've got a lot of features. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've got a report without a model. Yeah.
We have a hand up from Tabang. Can you see the comments and hands?
Sorry, no. It's let me see if I can't get the.
I'll just sharpen up. That's okay.
Yeah, but go for it, Tabang.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
All right, and you, mate.
So the action you just did is unsupported, as you mentioned. So literally, you could actually just copy and paste that into like create different tabs and just change the text across the different.
100%. In theory, if I wanted to add another visual, right, let's go see if we can break it. So we're going to go and copy that visual. We're going to put a comma between items. I'm going to go and put that somewhere else. So let's go and set the, let's go and move it some measure over. I'm going to have to do the same thing with this positioning. And yeah, what's the worst that could happen, right? 151, 148, and let's go and save that, and let's go and shut that down. But you can see how you might be able to do it. Have you ever had to move, pages from another report? And now if you were there, in the early days of Power BI, we couldn't even copy and paste between pages, right? But trying to move things from one report was very difficult. Now suddenly, if I can actually just go in there and say, just go and grab that whole page and just move it in there. Or let's say I actually want to get fancier. I've got 500 PBIX files, and my manager has asked me to add a terms and conditions page to each one. That's like 2 months worth of work for some junior to go and add these pages. Actually, with a little bit of regex, I could do that in 20 minutes, right? That would be amazing, right? And that's kind of the place we're getting to, this ability to do, things in a developer way, not in a business analyst, very manual kind of way, right? Okay.
Find and replace a color.
Find and replace colors, right? So I want to go and change the theme pads. I want to change, a lot of people put a little image logo, their company, right? So you've got a rebranding exercise. These things are, I've physically had projects where, hey, it's this 1,000-hour project where all we're doing is changing the logo on sort of SSRS reports. Yeah, man, it'd be so easy if we can start using sort of automation tools for that. Okay, so let's open that, and let's go and see if we've violated the terms of our use of Power BI. So just opening up, it's always going to open up on the wrong screen. Hopefully we'll have 2 visuals. One visual. No, it's ignored me. Or maybe it's there, it just hasn't layered it correctly. No, okay. You see, I obviously haven't done this in some sort of pre-approved way. Anyway, okay, so we've now, unless I obviously just haven't saved, but yeah, okay, so we've gone and made that change. Let's go and have a look at the rest of things. So the next thing we have is this data set. Now, we haven't added a data set to our report just yet, right? So, how do we add data to our Power BI report? We're going to say get data. I'm just going to go and bring in a sort of random CSV file. So let's go and find some data, some sample data, CSVs, people. That sounds useful enough. We're going to bring in this data, and obviously because we trust our data and it always works, we're just going to go straight to load. We don't have to transform our data at all. Okay, and we've got this model. Okay, so we've got this little Power BI file, and we're going to go and quickly save that. And let's go and have a look at what the model looks like. Okay, so if I come into, let's do that in our favorite tool, code. So we're going to come into the data sets file, and we can see a couple of items here. Okay, so a couple of JSON files that are really describing things, but the one that's important is this model.bin. Okay, so we spoke about how Power BI wraps everything in JSON files, and this actually comes from analysis services, so we can't even blame Power BI. And this describes our model. So we can see we've got things like the compatibility level, right? So this is the version of Power BI that we are currently using. Or technically the version of analysis services that we're using. We've got some things that describe, what was created. One of the best practices we'll tell you as Power BI sort of professionals is that you need to turn off time intelligence. This is where we can see that function is still there, right? So if theoretically, if I wanted to turn off time intelligence, I could do that like that. Again, remember, this is unsupported right now, so that probably won't work. So we'll set that back, and we can see some other things going on, right? So the big thing is we can go and see the tables that we have. So the tables is again a collection of objects that I get created. So when we go into Power Query, it's all the things we see. Now we've only got one object in there, it is that people table we created. We will see a couple of things. So we will see the columns that make it up. Now we have an index, we have a user ID, we have all of these sort of columns. And then we're going to go move down to the next one. And then comes the important one, the partitions, right? So the partitions is the M expression that we use to generate that file. Okay, so again, we see that M, but it's all been wrapped up inside of JSON. Again, so not particularly useful. Now, one of the things we're gonna get is a new format. So this is TimZil. Okay, Microsoft are not good at naming things. So this is TimZil. We're going to get TimDil. And TimDil is a new way of writing this file out in a YAML-like experience and a much more friendly. I mean, is there anybody that thinks this is easy to read? Hands up. No one. Okay, good. We all agree with it. So I'm going to go and turn this into TimDil. Now, there's not a Power BI will not support this process yet, but we have, we spoke about external tools. And the external tool that you absolutely should be using, if you're not using any others, is Tabular Editor. So Tabular Editor has the ability to go and build this format. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and enable this feature, exactly like I need to enable it in Power BI. I need to set the default serialization language. Let's just open up a pop box. Okay, so you're going to go Files, okay, Preferences, Files, Preferences. Oh, it keeps opening the wrong screen. And then we've got the serialization option. And you can see by default, it goes to this JSON object. If I flip that into TimDil, I now have this ability. Now it's obviously saying, hey, this is new. Are you sure you want to do it? Well, of course, this is a demo. So we're going to go and do that. I'm going to say, okay. And then I'm going to go and open that file. So I'm going to go and open that BIM file that I have. So we're going to go and say, open from files. We're going to go and find that file that we had, C drive. Where do you put a dev, demo, pug inside of the data sets, and we should have a model.bin. And this file will always be called model.bin, right? Regardless of what you call your PBI file. And we're going to open that up. And this sort of describes the file format, and it's making it sort of usable. But what I want to do is I want to write down a version to the disk that I can start playing with. So we're going to say file, and we're going to go and say save to folder. And I'm going to come back to my FUG, and I'm going to create a new folder. It's just going to be outside of it, TimDil. Now, I have no intention of writing this TimDil back into the model. Remember, I said it's not a slick experience yet. The intention is not that you are using TimDil, but you want to expose yourself to it so that you understand when this becomes the default language, you're on the front foot, okay? So we're going to go and load this TimDil content into that folder. Let's flip back into code, and we should have a new folder. You can see TimDil, and we've got a couple of files, and you can see we don't have a model.bim anymore. We have a model.timzil. Now, I want you to have a last little glance at this monstrosity of a JSON file next to us. We're going to click on model.timzil, and boom, isn't that so much easier? Now, it's not the whole thing, because one of the things it gives us is this ability to write different parts of the model into different areas. So this is the important stuff, right? So that compatibility level we spoke about. It tells us which sort of version of Power BI we were on. It tells us what tool we were using. It tells us if time intelligence is still enabled, right? All of those things we looked at a second ago. But this actually isn't what matters to us. What we care about are those tables. And you'll see that there is a folder called tables. So if I open it up, you're going to see 3 tables. And can anybody tell us why there's 3 tables? Remember, I only created the person table for a prize that Sven won't give us because there's no more prizes, but at least kudos. Who can tell me why there's 3 tables? And I've mentioned it 3 times now, so you've got no excuse. Anyone?
The time intelligence with the
time intelligence. That's exactly what that does. Yeah. So what auto date time? So that's what the feature is called, auto date time. When you go in the options, and what that does is every time it sees a date column in your model, it goes and creates a secret date table. Okay, that it can use. That's why when you add a date, it can create a little date hierarchy for you, because it goes and creates this new table. Now, there's all sorts of problems with that. Okay, so we don't actually want that, but you can see that there are these tables. So we can actually go and have a look at the definition of that table. You can see that First, it gets this really hideous name, which doesn't matter because, well, it's hidden. We're never going to be able to see it. All right. But it's got all of these other features. You know, it's an import mode, exactly like our model. This is the expression. OK, so how does it do it? It creates a calendar table. It goes and finds the minimum birth date. It goes and finds the maximum birth date, and it creates a timetable, kind of like we would do. Right. But, you know, again, it's going to create one per column. OK, so not a great thing, but you can very easily see how this data, and most importantly, can you see how easy this is to read? I appreciate maybe it's not as easy as reading something in English, but it's way easier than what you saw in that JSON. Okay, so I have a table. It consists of a partition. This is the definition of the partition. It consists out of columns. These are the columns. Now, column, then name. Then it has a data category. This is the category. This is the data type. Everything is actually very easy. And I would be able to do things like I wanted to change that out to in 64 instead of a date. Now, obviously, it's not a change I would want to make, but you know, it becomes that easy to make these sort of changes. Okay, so this is going to make that modeling experience very easy for you, and it allows teams working on the same model. Okay, because currently, if we've got a BIM file, you know, what we're doing right now is we're using a thin report model. We create one PBIX file, and a data analyst will work on that model, and then we'll create a whole bunch of thin visual reports, so we can have a couple of report writers. This is actually going to enable multiple developers to work on the same model at the same time, right? Because we can open this up in our favorite source control tool, and we can do all of this stuff. Okay, does anybody have any questions before we get to the other side of the conversation, which is how we're going to use it in the service?
I do.
I appreciate it's a lot. And
So,
you are absolutely not expected to know any of this, right? Microsoft will make this seamless. It's to enable new types of users. Sorry, Stefan, yeah?
yeah. So when you're editing, I see, like, for example, on line 23, you've actually got DAX written there on the right-hand side of the equal sign.
100%, yeah.
Is there any kind of plugin, maybe into VS Code, that tells you whether your DAX has an error in it, like the red squiggles, that kind of thing? Or would you have to save this, close Power BI, open it up again before you can see if you've made any errors in your coding?
So there are actually tools coming that will give us. So the first thing that we actually do have is this model is currently working against that Tyndall file. So we can use all of the tabular editor validations, right? And tabular editor can do a lot of those kind of validations about schemas and all that, as well as running the best practice analyzer, right? So we've got a lot of that tooling. There is a VS Code extension. I don't have it installed specifically for Tyndall. So it gives you all the syntax highlighting and all that, you know. So, you know, it is becoming a richer ecosystem. Remember, none of this is technically public right now. So yes, there's no supported tools. The guy who made it is a guy named Gerhard Bunkel, German fella. Okay, so, you know, search for that in VS Code and you can play around with that. All right. Any other questions? Daryl.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah.
Hey.
Can you do this in Visual Studio, or must it only be in VS Code?
You can do it in Notepad, in Vim, in whatever your tool of choice is. So Visual Studio, absolutely. Now, if you were doing in Visual Studio, you might even have a leg up, because Visual Studio actually speaks that model.bim. You know, that is actually a Visual Studio. So if you've ever developed a tabular model in Visual Studio, that is what you work with, right? So yes, absolutely, you can use Visual Studio. Now it's just text at this point. That's the whole point. We are making things. You know, I can open up a Notepad. I can actually open it up in Git itself and actually modify the files within GitHub or Visual Studio. Again, I'm not suggesting that as a best practice, but absolutely possible.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Okay. So next thing we're going to do is we've got this little model. I suppose I should make it a little bit better. It's going to add a pie chart. I believe that's the in thing nowadays, right? So we're going to go and add some sort of visual pie chart. I've only got one number. All right. So this is a completely meaningless pie chart. Go and view that by sex. All right. Okay. So yeah. So this is worst practice. I don't do visuals. This is why. Okay. And just getting back to that conversation about the data hierarchy. You remember I spoke about this, when I'm doing this, it's actually connecting to that hidden date table. That's what you're seeing right there. You're not necessarily seeing the date of birth from the file. It's that hidden table. Okay. All right, so we've got this hideous little report. I'm going to go and save that. And I'm going to move over to Power BI, right? So we're going to go and see how does this integrate with the larger ecosystem. And we're going to start, we're going to go through probably the pattern that you're going to go through at first. We're going to go into a workspace and we're going to upload a report. So let's ask questions. Am I even logged in with the right profile? I am, always handy. It's you. I'm going to come into Power BI. So I've got this hideous Zoom thing in the way. And where is my, yeah, I won't break my Zoom connection if I change website. And just logging it to. And I have created a workspace. And I called that workspace FUG something. Let's go and say FUG. You know what? I probably didn't save it. Okay, so I'm going to go and create a FUG demo workspace. We're going to go and apply that. So we're going to go and create a workspace. And what I want to do is I want to go and hook this up to source control. Now, Power BI people aren't generally familiar with what source control is. The best version of source control we technically had from Microsoft was put it in SharePoint, right? Sort of some sort of OneDrive synchronization. How can I get rid of this banner? Sorry, I appreciate you probably can't see this banner, but Zoom has this banner over the tabs that I actually need to work with.
You can drag it to a different screen, perhaps. That's what I did when I was sharing.
We can't see it, but it is particularly
yeah, but it gets in my way. Okay, it's got it. All right, I got it. Okay, so within the Microsoft world, our source control tool is really Azure DevOps. Now, there is also GitHub, but we don't have support for GitHub just yet. It is coming, but it's not part of this initial private preview. So we're going to use Azure DevOps. I've got an Azure DevOps solution. I think I already opened it up. So there it is. Okay. And I've gone and created a project, right? So this little FUG demo. Now, just an important thing, when I go and create this demo, if I click on advanced, you can see I've got source control versions. I have two choices, Git and TFS. Okay, I should be using Git. Okay, TFS, if you have some sort of legacy reason for doing that, unless, barring that, you absolutely should be using Git. Git is the way forward. Okay, so I've got a repo that's done that. So this FUG user group, and it's a collection of a whole bunch of services that we're not going to get into right now. But the one that's important for us is this idea of repos. So repos are these repositories. And I haven't initialized mine yet. So it's saying, hey, we're going to go and create this online thing where you can store changes, what you want it to look like. So we're going to go and say, add a README and just go and initialize it. Okay, so that's going to go and create a local version of a Git repository. And then I'm going to go and hook up my Power BI report onto that. Okay, so I'm going to quickly flip over to the workspace settings, and you can see that there is a new Git integration option. Now, this only applies if you are using some sort of premium back workspace. So premium per user, premium or fabric, right? Power BI Pro users, this is not available to you, at least not yet, but maybe, I think this is a legitimate case of an enterprise feature. Maybe not. Okay, so we're going to say Git, and we're going to choose the provider. As I said, there is only one, okay? And it automatically hooks into your tenant. So you can only really use your organization's GitHub repo. So you're not, obviously if you're a consultant, you work across multiple repos, you're going to have to work in the client's repo. I'm going to select the organization, okay? And I have one called Mike MVP. And I'm going to go and select the one which we call Fabric FUG. So this is the project, and then the Git repo. So this is the default repo. We can obviously create multiple repos per project. Okay, so you might want to sort of manage different sort of workloads, different whatever those domains are. You can do that. We're going to select the FUG. I'm going to select the branch by default. a branch is like a working version. You can have multiple branches that can be used. We're going to use main. We're not going to be talking about branching strategies today. And then you're going to choose a Git folder. I'm going to choose to put it in the default one. So I'm going to say connect and sync. And this is now taking my workspace and syncing it back up with Power BI. So if I go into the workspace, do a refresh, okay, I'm not going to see anything, right? And why is there nothing in there? Because there's nothing in my workspace.
Your local machine.
I haven't done anything, right? Exactly that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to deploy things the old-fashioned way. And I'm going to go and say publish, and it's going to bring up a little list. And I'm going to type in FUG, and hopefully I'm going to find FUG demo. Yeah, okay, we're going to select that, and we're going to upload that report. So exactly what we're used to. It's taking that report, it's sending it out. Now, what you may or may not have known is when we take a report and publish it, the service is actually ripping that part into two pieces. And that should look familiar because we saw that happen a moment ago. We saw how the report got ripped into a report and a data set, okay? Which is why when you go into the service, of course, you always see, sorry, not that guy, you always see a report in the data set, and then you see a dashboard as well. I wish they wouldn't create the dashboard, but these are these two bits. And you can see that I've got this, the first thing you can see, there's a brand new column there called get status. And it's telling me that I have not synchronized, sorry, use good English. So I haven't committed that new thing to this repo. So you're going to see a couple of things. The first thing at the bottom here, I can see main. So I can see which branch I'm using. I can see what my last commit is. Okay, so now I know what version I'm on. Okay, and I'll show you how you can see those versions in Git. We can see that these two artifacts haven't been committed, and source control is telling me that, hey, there's these two things. Now, usually what we would do is we would go open up, some sort of Git edit, Git sort of a tool where we can go and submit that. But this is built into the tool, so I can just click on those items. I can say, go and add these two items and first commit. All right, so we're going to go and give it a good commit message, and then we're going to say commit. Okay, so if I let that sort of churn away. Okay, so we've now gone and synchronized synchronized those two objects. If I come back into my repo and I do a refresh, okay, there I can see those two artifacts exactly as I see. So now I've got that thing that was published in the service. I can actually pull it down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and pull that thing that's now in the cloud, and I'm going to pull it down to my local repo. What I'm going to actually do, just because I'm going to be sneaky, I'm going to go and close this Power BI report. Okay, so it's called Demo 1. I'm going to go and rename it, and we're going to call that Demo 2 probably. Right. So okay, so we're going to go and we're going to go and clone that. That copy that's in the cloud, so our local one. So, obviously every tool has a bit, but Visual Studio and DevOps work really well. So I'm going to say clone in VS Code. It's going to say, cool. Where would you like to clone it? I'm going to tell it where. I want to go put it in my dev, and my demo, in my FUG. Let's go and create a new folder. Naming is always the hardest thing, right? Demo, and I'm not good at naming, because I'm going to call it Demo 2 with, I'm not even going to get my capitalization right, and we're going to select that as the destination. Okay, so here I can see that new Demo 2 folder. Oh, no, it's going to make me log in. Okay, but hopefully it's not going to want that little number. It's becoming harder and harder to log into these services nowadays. Okay, all right. Yeah, open a new window, that's fine. Okay, so here we can see this is now the new object that we created. Now, who can spot the difference? Well, this thing that we created versus what we saw earlier.
That directory file, right? I think that linked to the different reports and data sets.
The master one, the PBIP file is missing, right? So that's actually one of the sort of confusing things. So what we're actually going to be able to do, right, is we can actually go and, in fact, I'm going to just copy it right like that. So we're going to go and copy this PBIP file. If I place it in that folder, okay, it now works. Okay, So that's quite cool. Then that's how I can hook it up. But that's one of the challenges you're going to have. It's like, how do I even open this thing up? As long as that folder, remember it then goes and points to that thing called PBIP. So as long as this demo1 report is that folder over there, it will open up. Okay, and if you renamed your report, you just have to rename it appropriately. Okay, the other thing that's missing, all right, is this, and this is actually really important too. There's a gitignore file. So what gitignore is this ability to tell source control to not check in certain things. Okay, so we often don't want to check in things like passwords, but what we're telling it here is not to check in the data. So that ABF file is actually the database file that sits within Power BI, and we're saying don't check that in. So every time you commit code, you're essentially checking in the same thing as that template file. It's everything you need to build that report except for the data, which one keeps our data small, but also sort of solves a whole bunch of compliance issues about checking in certain, sensitive customer data into the shared repository, right? Okay, so we're telling it never ever check in that repo, which does mean that the first thing, anybody who's checking out code from Power BI, the first thing that always going to have to do is do a full refresh in the model, because there's no data that comes with it, right? So maybe there's a little bit more work from that perspective, but it's certainly a better approach than checking all the data. Okay, so now we've gone in and checked in that code, and we can then go and make changes in exactly the same way. I can open this report, I can make a change. So I'm going to go and we're going to open it up again, Power BI, and I am out of time, Sven. You did say I could have a little bit more time, but we'll try to stick to it. Okay, so I've got this little page that's there. Okay, so first thing you can see, it says this has little or no data. Remember, I spoke about the need to do this refresh. So we're going to do a refresh. We're going to be building a local ABF file. So now I have data. Obviously because Sven told me about the pie charts are bad, so I'm going to quickly flip that into a bar chart. I'm going to go and save that feature. Okay, and now I want to push that back up, right? So you saw how I used Power BI, the service, to make that change. I can do exactly the same thing from source control using code. Code has good integration, so we're going to say fixed visual. Okay, we're going to go and commit. It's throwing me an error and it's saying, well, you haven't actually said what you wanted to commit. Would you like me to commit everything? So I'm going to say, yeah, sure, good catch. And it's going to go and do that. So it's now gone and added that change to my local repository. And this is important. You then have to sync it up to the cloud, right? Sometimes people go and make all these commits and they're confused. So I'm going to go and do that push and pull, and I'm pushing that cloud up or that change into the service. So I've made a local change, okay? And I can come into the service again, which is over here, okay? If I refresh it, okay, now you can see we've got that little PBIP file, okay? But I want to come back into the Power BI service. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of a refresh. Yeah, and it should then sort of determine that it is one version behind. Okay, you can see it's figured out that, hey, a change happened, but not through my portal. It came from somewhere else. It was to say, you know what, go and update that. And they were smart enough to see, the changes in the visual. There's been no change to the model. There's been no change anything. It's only the visual that changed. And I can update all. And that visual, now if I go there, if life is good, we should see that bar chart, right? Okay, so now we've got this fully managed way of managing change. We can do local development. We can publish it up the cloud. We can make those developments in the cloud. We can pull it down to our local repository. Multiple people can work because I've got this clean way of merging. I think just the nice thing, as I wrap up, and then we can hit as many questions as you like. I'm happy to hang around for the next half an hour, but obviously I appreciate some people need to go. So what we want to do is we want to actually go and see all the changes. Okay, so here we can see that we've made 3 changes. So the first thing was that initialization of the repository. Okay, the next one was we did the initial commit, and that was from the Power BI service when we created that report and we checked that report in. And then the second one was when we fixed the visual. Now, one of the challenges we've always had with Power BI, even when we got that versioning is, sure, these 2 versions are different, but what's different? So then you had to open up 2 versions of the Power BI, and you kind of had to try and eyeball it to find that difference. Now, all of a sudden, that's really not hard, because I can just click on this visual, and it actually shows me exactly where the differences are, right? Those are the differences, okay? It highlights that. It can say, obviously, I moved my visual, I changed that, so it's very specific on what those are. And if we sort of just browse along there, we will see that we changed it from a pie chart. The red is what it was, the green is what it is. So very easily, okay, maybe not great, because once it's in YAML, then it's going to be really easy to see, but this is still really good, right? How would you have detected that change, last year? All right. Okay. So yeah, really, really cool stuff coming. It's going to make the development experience in Power BI so much more powerful. There's a ton more features coming. Expect to see that hardening evolve. Okay, so we're going to see YAML appear in a lot more places. We're going to see Tyndall become a thing. But yeah, source control is genuinely coming to Power BI, right? Genuine. Okay. Cool, so that's me. I will try not to show you anymore, although we could keep going. But I'm happy to take questions until... Sven, do you want to maybe do a wrap up, and then anybody who needs to go can go, and then we can do questions after that?
Perfect, thanks, Michael. In fact, Stefan had to drop off. We rotate who's the MC, and it was his turn, but he had to leave at 6. So he did ask if I could just wrap things up at the end here. So first of all, thank you for that presentation. I have seen that quite a few people have dropped off. Maybe that's from your prolific use of the FUG word. I've heard it more times today than ever before.
It wasn't me who chose FUG.
I'll never forget the announcement when they told us that we were going from PUG to FUG. It was very entertaining. But anyway, yeah, thank you. I found that tremendously helpful. And definitely my team and I are going to be working on this and experimenting. I'm very excited about it. So personally, thank you for that. There are obviously still quite a number of people on the call. You're welcome to ask questions, but sorry, before too many people drop off, there is just one quick announcement that I would like to make in terms of an upcoming event. There is a global Power Platform bootcamp. There was one beginning of this year, and there will be another one beginning of next year. It's normally during the end, towards the end of February, or in this case, we will be having one here in Johannesburg on Saturday, the 2nd of March. It's a full-day event. It's the Power Platform, so that obviously includes Power BI and so on, Power Automate, Power Apps, and so on. So the registration will open soon, but more importantly, we are putting out a note. Anyone who's keen to present, call for speakers is currently open. So I'm going to just pop that into the chat, the link for that. Everyone in the meeting, and Control V, enter. All right, so there's a sessionized link in the chat. If anyone is keen to do a presentation, you're more than welcome. In fact, we're encouraging that. And the topic can be Power Automate, Power Apps, Power Pages, Power Virtual Agents, and of course, everyone's favorite, Power BI. So please click on the link. The closing submission for that is at the end of November. We do want to wrap up the agenda before the end of the year and then start finalizing all the details in January. All right, so that's that sort of wrap-up news. Then back to Michael, and anyone who's got questions, please feel free to either just ask it directly or just stick up your hand. Daryl, go for it.
Thanks, Finn. Michael, just to recap, can you just confirm everything that's required to integrate version control? So you start your project, you need to have a Git account as well as a DevOps account. Is that correct?
Okay, well, it's Azure DevOps, right? Okay, so Git is a protocol, okay, and Azure DevOps implements that. So you don't need a Git account per se. You might have a GitHub account, and that's just another provider, also conveniently owned by Microsoft. But yeah, so you would have to have a, and because Azure DevOps is AD bound, it is your it is your
Correct.
your organizational repo. You can use it for free for teams of 5, or if you have certain MSDN licenses. So there may or may not be a licensing implication, depending on exactly what you're doing and the size of it. But generally, Microsoft are happy to let small teams work for free. And again, GitHub integration will be there eventually, so don't let that put you off. So yeah, and then what you do is, if so I've used Visual Studio Code. Now Visual Studio Code doesn't by default install Git, but if I remember correctly, the first time you actually selected it, it'll say, hey, we don't have Git installed. Do you want to click it? You just say yes, and it'll go through that process of actually installing Git for you. It's a very lightweight application that manages that, right? So that gives you the ability to then upload those kind of changes. Yeah, so you got so once you got Azure DevOps, yeah, you've got VS Code. So both of those tools are free, and you absolutely don't need VS Code, right? If all you're looking at doing is making the change there and then checking in with the Git command line, you can do that. GitHub, VS Code's actually easier though, so I would recommend it. It is an
So the Azure DevOps would be my biggest hurdle there, especially from a corporate point of view.
Yes, but if you are chances are they already have a repo. What you might have is that there's
licensed for
somebody might have nicked your licenses. That's so you might just have to sort that out. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And then I suppose that's part of like how many guys would be working on the project then is how many Azure DevOps licenses or MSDN licenses you've got available. That's sort of your limitation, I would suppose.
Yes, but they are generally cheap, and depending on the so you've got the things called MSDN subscriptions, which gives you a number of licenses. But I'm afraid I'm not a licensing guy, especially in Visual Studio Stack. So I can only pass.
It's more just the prerequisites.
Yeah, okay. But if you wanted to, right, you can absolutely use GitHub. What you don't get is that automatic synchronization. But if what you want to do is basically be able to have PBX files checked into source control, and then the deployment process isn't doing that upload, you still have the traditional publish, right? You can use that process and then quite happily use GitHub. Or you can use some other process, right? So deployment pipelines. So you can actually then go and, when something is checked into GitHub, now this is obviously getting very technical, but you can actually build this process to go and suck it in from GitHub and deploy to the Azure service using the, the Power BI APIs. So there are
so we actually want to do that roadmap with deployment pipelines and version control.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Rian, you had your hand up. Go for it.
Yes, well, Michael actually answered it right at the end there. I was just checking if they're only supporting Azure DevOps. But yeah, I suppose it's just that one feature that you miss if you're using another source control provider.
For now, right? So remember, technically, this sort of got released with the Fabric wave. All right, so perhaps when Fabric goes live, we'll see other providers. I can't comment one way or the other. That is pure speculation. But you can definitely see that they are preparing for it. So if we come back into the workspace, when we actually go and sorry, not that one. There we go. If we, the fact that they've created a drop down for it and it's only got one item, they're intending to add more. It's just not there today.
Yeah, I listened to something the other day that basically said that Microsoft are going to treat Fabric the same way as they've treated Power BI, and that is monthly updates. So very, very fast release cadence. So you can guarantee it's coming, in one of
just to put that in context, what actually happened within the broader team is that the people who built Power BI took over the Synapse team. I mean, that's probably not politically the correct way to say it, but essentially Amir Netz heads up that entire division now. So he is driving the same philosophies that made Power BI what it is throughout the same product. And it's the same people, right? So, it's Kim Manus and Josh and, a guy in the Cube, right? So Guy in the Cube are getting behind Fabric now. So it's the same team. So you will see a very similar release cadence and what shall we say, sort of developer engagement. Yeah, it's going to be very similar.
They just need a new person to do the videos of the updates. I don't like the new chap. Anyway,
Ryan.
Personal view.
Well, Amanda's back in the team. You know, Amanda's back at
I saw she was gone and then she's back. Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. Cool. Any other questions? Anything you want me to show you? I'm obviously more than happy to just play around with it. If you know, something didn't make sense to you, or you'd like, can we actually really try break that PBX file with a bad change? Yeah, we can do all of those things. Right?
Yeah, no need to actually do this, but I'm just going to make the comment that our team is likely to copy and paste pages through, you know, the report file.
Yeah,
because that's obviously a really much easier way of doing things. You even mentioned that back in the old days when we couldn't even copy from one page to the next. Obviously, in this case, from one file to the next, including bookmarks and filters and things like that. We want to be able to do that. So that's good.
Yes. Well, that's what's going to be interesting is when you get that multi-page, you know, how are bookmarks and synchronizations and all that, how is that going to look, you know, and Microsoft has to figure that out, right? That's all part of that hardening exercise. It is really hard to go and change the underlying format of a very popular tool while everybody's using it. So I expect that to take an insignificant amount or a significant amount of engineering effort to get that right.
Yeah, you can expect a few bugs along the way. What was working?
I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, but I mean, the community is pretty good at picking that stuff up pretty quickly, right? So, so yeah. Should be as buggy as the rest of Power BI has been, right? Keegan.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really good. I have one question. So I was actually working on a project file, and when it was working fine, you know, during the course of the week or so, and then when I opened it again, all of a sudden I got a DBCC error, which was really odd because there wasn't actually a lot of changes that happened in the file. So what was odd is when you restarted my computer, file opened correctly, you know, fine. So I wanted to know, is the integrity of the file at a high risk if you do the split up like that, rather than just keeping it a PBIX, or shouldn't it have an effect?
Where the risk comes in is, so GitHub uses this idea of differential merges, right? So I make a little change to this JSON file, and I make a little change to this file, and maybe you make a third little change, right? And when we merge those things, maybe the new thing with all three doesn't make sense, okay? So there is always those kind of risks. So there is going to be some, you know, I mentioned this hardening, right? That's where the hardening of that file becomes important. They need to remove these arbitrary couplings of things, right? You saw those names are kind of GUIDs, and then those are referred to in other modules. They need to remove all of that kind of stuff so that this removes those kind of dependencies between objects, and therefore the corruption that happens between them. Is it going to be perfect? You know, I think there's always opportunity break. You know, it doesn't matter what you build, there's somebody out there who's going to break it, right? You know, so yeah. But hopefully that experience will get better. And perhaps what we'll actually get is Power BI will actually, could we build something into source control, you know, that when you actually do those commits, it could actually say, hey, this kind of commit, you know, probably will break this thing. Now we can do that with CI/CD pipelines, right? But, you know, we're not quite there yet. But will we be able to do something, you know, within Power BI? Possibly. Certainly not in the first release. You know, maybe this is 2 years' time, but yeah, hopefully the experience is going to get a lot better.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was really insightful. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Anyone else? Daryl.
Good guy, Daryl.
Sorry, stupid question. Does it
No stupid questions?
matter? Does it make a difference if you save your file as a project file, but you're never using the version commit and stuff? Does it make any effect on the data
No.
and the file and working ability and stuff?
No, there'd be no difference right now, right? I mean, look, theoretically, there's a possibility that Microsoft makes a bug and that serialization causes some issue. But the exact opposite is true as well, right? Maybe it's the binary serialization that's problematic. But yeah, hopefully Microsoft's and they are a lot better at testing nowadays. So hopefully that's not an issue. But I would say generally not. But there's always exceptions, right?
Okay, and then when you create your project, it creates that, should you put it in its own separate folder so that you can use your ignore file, and you don't want to clutter your whole project folder with other types of files and stuff?
Yeah, that is the one sort of funny feature, right? So what I would have thought is, and just to describe what that is, we've got this root folder. It creates so this demo one is the name of the report. So it creates demo one, it creates two folders. Would it not have made sense to put all of that in demo one, right? And then put all those artifacts in there? I mean, it might have made sense. But I certainly you want this PBIP folder at the root level. So maybe we could have had, this PBIP folder and then one folder and then two folders inside that. But the people at Microsoft are smarter than me, so I'm sure they have their reasoning for it, and perhaps it might change, right? Maybe that is maybe they'll see the errors of their ways. They're not committing to anything yet, right? That's the nice thing about public preview. They can change their mind. I mean, that's important to mention, right? So we spoke about, should I move over to this? It is in public preview. Maybe Microsoft kill it, and then you have to sort of backport back to PBIX files. That is a realistic risk as well.
Okay.
Hopefully not a very likely risk, but it is there.
Cool. Thanks.
Rian?
Thanks. Yeah, just in terms of forwards compatibility, are they at the moment supporting a PBIX conversion to PBIP? I'm sure at some point there's going to be some third-party tool that does it.
Oh, well, you need just open up your PBIX file and say save as PBIT.
Oh wow, okay.
That's your migration, right?
Wow.
By the way, you said T instead of P, but yeah, that is it. In fact, we've been saving as PBIX back to PBIP and backwards and forwards quite a few times, as and when. But yeah, it is quite easy.
Yeah, in theory, look, I mean, there's, you never want to speak in an absolute, but yes, it is always good, right? Yeah, should be good. All right, any other questions? We're going to go and enjoy our Thursdays. Puzza Thursdays, right, guys?
Nice. All of us in Joburg are feeling the heat, so a nice cold beverage would be tremendous. Okay.
I think so.
All right, well then, thank you to the diehards staying on the call to the end and all the questions, and then a very, very big thank you to Michael. As I said earlier, I really enjoyed it by the sounds of it. Everyone else enjoyed it. I kept looking at the chat. Everyone really found it very helpful and very useful. So thank you very much. And everyone else, we'll see you in a month's time, either online or in person on the 30th of November for our next event.
There's just a question here, sorry, that maybe, about FUG certification. Will there be a FUG certification, a Fabric certification, right? Yes, there would be within the richness of time. It's just it's not publicly available yet.
Yeah, they've already started changing the exams. The 3rd of November, you're going to be writing a slightly different exam to what you wrote before. I've started observing that as well, and there's more Fabric stuff in there. There's a tiny bit gone in there in terms of the syllabus.
Right. Thanks, everyone. See you all next month.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks.